Hello everybody, welcome back to the Pleasuring Shed. Thank you so much for joining me again. This is Sarkanda Reed part 2. In the last video in Sarkanda Reed part 1, if you haven't seen it yet, go check it out, it's awesome. We made a Sarkanda Reed float. Here we are, I'll hold that in front of the camera for you. And we had great success fishing on it. We had a few bites and we landed a few fish, so that was really lovely. What we're going to do in this video is take a look at the different types of floats we can make with Sarkanda Reed. Sarkanda Reed is a really versatile material, allowing us to make lots of different types of floats. So we're going to take a look at some of them now. But before we do that, just let me say thank you very much to all of you who have liked the videos, commented on the videos, and subscribed to my channel. It's really awesome. I can't believe how lucky we are to have so many likes and subscribes. If you haven't done that yet, please do. Subscribe, hit the notification bell, click on the like buttons if you like it. It all helps the channel. It helps the channel grow. It helps the algorithms and gets me out to more people. So that's really, really appreciated. So let's get on and take a look at the different types of floats. So on the bench in front of me, I've got 3 different floats, all made from Sarkanda Reed and bamboo skewer. So the Waggler we've already seen it in action. We know it works. Awesome. Next to it, we have what I call an Insert Waggler. So we've got, again, a very similar body, but the tip is much finer with a bamboo skewer inserted into the Sarkanda Reed. It gives you a finer tip, makes your bites a little bit more sensitive. You can pip it right down, so just the tip is showing out of the water. Or if it's a slightly more windy day, we can shot it a bit lighter and have more of the tip showing. So that's really good. And the last float we got on the end here, this is what I would call an antenna float. So we've got a long stem coming out of the Sarkanda Reed body. Again, it's a bamboo skewer, but it's a long stem and it's got the bands of color on it. Now, what I like to use these for are lift bites. So in those early summer months when you're fishing for crucian carp, tench, things like that, they do like to feed off the bottom. And with a bulk of shot on the bottom of the lake bed, when the fish picks up that hook, it lifts up the weights, the float rises up, and using those bands of color, we get a really good sensitive lift bite. So looking at the construction of the antenna float and the Insert Waggler, the construction type is very, very similar. So we'll take a look at both of them and we're going to make them both together at the same time because, like I say, it's a very similar process. So let's move these to one side and look at the bodies of the float. So for the body of the float, we've just got a piece of straight Sarkanda Reed. We've cut that to length. It is, I can tell you exactly how long it is. It is 10 centimeters long. And then what we want to do into each end this time, if you remember on the Waggler, we're only inserting on one end to make the eyelet, the little step there in the foot for the eyelet. So we're going to do that on all of our floats. But on the Insert Waggler and the antenna float, we want to put a piece of bamboo skewer in the bottom end to make our foot, and we want to put it in the top end to make the stem. So take your bamboo skewer and your Sarkanda Reed with the pointy bit of the skewer, place it in the center, and then we're going to twist and rotate and very gently, don't push too hard because you'll split the reed, just slowly encourage the skewer to go into the reed, keeping it nice and straight, not forcing it too hard, and just slowly rotating both parts. So rotating the Sarkanda Reed one way and the bamboo skewer the other in opposite directions, and just easing them in. And we want to push that in probably about 2 centimeters, something like that. Now, it doesn't look like I'm doing very much, but actually, when I stop and pull it out, you can see that it's gone in a good couple of centimeters there. So that one goes in there. We'll cut that to length in a minute, and we can get another piece of skewer, and we're going to do the same at the bottom end. Exactly the same process. Pushing that in, rotating slowly until both parts are in together, and it's about 2 centimeters into the reed. So I'll just stop there and have a look, see how deep we've gone. Well, there we are. So that's a good 2.5 centimeters, about an inch. Right, so we've made our holes. We can put the skewers to one side for a moment. So we've made our holes at each end. What we're going to do now is take the Sarkanda Reed, and we're going to use the sander to just take off that edge there and make a bevel on the end. So that'll help us whip up onto the stem when we've done that. So yeah, let's take it over to the sander. So we've got our length of Sarkanda Reed, and we've tapered off the edges, and we've got our holes already pre-made. So now we are going to insert the bamboo skewer back into our holes, and just make sure that they're all nice and straight. And we're going to add a little blob of super glue, and that's going to fix in the stems. This is all exactly as we did on the bamboo skewer. No, it's not. It's exactly what we did on the Waggler float. I've got bamboo skewer on the brain. So now we've got our bamboo skewer, we're going to insert that with the glue into the Sarkanda Reed, push it in gently, and there we are. That's fixed in there now. That's not coming out at all. And we're going to turn our attention to the other end, and we're going to repeat the process. So a little bit of glue, just a blob. That runs down a little inside. And then again, with our reed, with our skewer, brain's not working today, we're going to squish that in. Again, just a slight bit of pressure, and bosh, that's in already. And already that's glued really quickly. I don't know what it is about this stuff, but it really does glue quick. So there we are. So that looks a bit weird. It's all a bit far too long. So we're going to cut down the skewer on this end to make our foot for our eyelet. And then we can choose the length of the skewer at this end for our tip. So we've got to decide whether it's going to be an antenna float or an insert waggler. So first of all, let's get this measured. So we're going to measure this now at 3 centimeters. So I'll grab my pencil and my ruler, and we're going to mark that at 3 centimeters. Just there. And we're going to snip that off with my side cutters. Let's do that way around. There we are. So that's going to be the bit we whip the eyelet onto. Now we need to decide this end whether it's going to be an insert waggler, so the tip is maybe, I don't know, 4 centimeters long, something like that, or we can leave it as an antenna float where we can pretty much leave a good length of stem on there, and that length is your choice. You can have as many bands of color on there as you want. So I'm going to go for about an 8 centimeter stem here, and we're going to use this as the antenna float. So let's measure that again. Let's see what we've got on there already. We've got about 10 centimeters on there, and I'm going to knock that down to 8 centimeters. So I've marked there at 8 centimeters, and again I'm just going to snip off that little end piece. And there we are. That is the basic bones of our antenna float. You repeat exactly this process for the insert waggler, but obviously you'd cut this stem here just that little bit shorter, about 4.5, maybe 5 centimeters. Again, it's your choice, it's your float, it's your design. So let's move on and take a look at what happens next. So I've already whipped on the eyelet, and I've done a little bit of decorative whipping, just coming up the foot of the float there, the little bit of stem. Now, I'm not going to go through all the whipping processes again because I've done that on lots of my previous videos. So if you want to see how I put on that little eyelet at the bottom there and how I whip up the stem and onto the Sarkanda Reed, please check out my previous videos because the process is very similar all the way along. And so you can get a good idea from that. And of course, it encourages you to watch my other films. So thanks for that. So now we've got that done, we can turn our attentions to the stem at the top. And before I whip this part of it, I'm going to paint the stems and give them their bright banded colours. So let's take a look at those. So I've got some already prepared. So first thing I'm going to do is paint the stem white. So this is the antenna float, and this is the Insert Waggler. So you can see very, very similar in their designs, but I've painted them both white. The reason I paint them both white, as I've said in my previous videos, is that the yellow that I'm going to use as the base color is quite translucent, and if you have darkness or dark shadows on the stem itself, on here, that will actually come through the yellow paint and you won't get a nice finish. So really put a good undercoat, if you like, of the white on there, and that allows you to paint on the yellow. So if you move those to one side, come off the peg, there we are. So now I have got the yellow painted on there, so you can see that now. Now we've got to make a decision on the banding width and the colors that we're going to use. I like to use the red and the yellow together. That works really well. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, use the white as a base color as well, and have white within your banding. Again, the design is completely your choice. So with my yellow base coat on, I then need to move on to think about how much of the tip of the float I want to be out of the water. So I'm going to start here on the antenna float. I'm probably going to have about 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters of red. And then I'm going to have about 3 or 4 bands of red, yellow down the stem. With the antenna float, I'll probably just use 2 colors. I'll have a red at the top with a yellow base. So let's show you what I've done in painting those. Again, you've seen me paint floats in previous videos, so I don't really want to bore you too much by repeating myself over and over again. But you can see what I've done here. I have banded it, so I've got a 2.5 centimeter coloured top on the red, then a 1.5 centimeter yellow, 1.5 centimeter red, 1.5 centimeter yellow, and then a little bit at the bottom that just happened to work out. Red and yellow on the tips there. So that's that done. Then varnished, put a base coat of varnish on. Remember, it's the Rustin's clear varnish, the quick drying varnish. Doesn't have to be Rustin's, I'm not sponsored, but it is a good product to use. So we give that all a nice coat over. That seals on the threads, and yeah, it just makes the float a little bit more easy to handle and work with. So once that varnish is dried off, we'll move these to one side and we'll move to the next step, which is whipping the top section. So I think what I'll actually do is show you the whipping process, because it is a little bit different on here. So you can see one finished, but let me show you now how I did that whipping. So on each of the coats of paint that I put on, it's just something that you might be interested in. I put on 2 coats. So 2 coats of the white, and the white I used was the Revel matte number 5. So just a straight matte white. It gives a good coverage and it's nice and thick when it goes on. But 2 coats of that, and that really seals it, and there's no dark shadows or anything like that. The yellow, which I put on as a base coat, I used the Revel, and that's SM312. And remember, this is quite opaque, so that white is just there to really make the yellow pop with no shadow underneath. And the red parts was Revel SM332. It's a really nice bright red. So 2 coats of each, and let that dry before you do any whipping. Really want to let that paint harden. So probably leave it overnight, I would say, and that paint goes nice and hard. If you try and whip onto it when the paint is fresh, the paint is quite soft, and as you pull the whipping, as you pull the thread, it can cut into that freshly painted surface and just ruin it. So let that surface go really nice and hard. Now we need to move on to the whipping. So we take our black thread. I'm just using a standard black thread here. It's a nylon thread, as you've seen in my previous videos, and I'm going to trap the thread just under my thumbnail. You can see that there. Now I'm going to take the main thread and I'm going to start to whip under and over the top. So round we come. And as I whip round, I'm going to go right over the thread that I'm holding under my thumbnail. Bit fiddly. And then we start to develop that black band, making sure it's all nice and neat. Once we've got a couple of turns on, what we can do then is clamp it under our index finger, move the thread out of the way, take our sharp blade and just snip off that tag end. There it goes. And then we continue rotating the float. And we got a nice thick band there now. So what I'm going to do now is really change the angle quite sharply. And then again, rotating the float down to the next color change where the yellow meets the red. And I'm going to change the angle again, coming back to almost straight, 90 degrees off from the float, and start rotating the float again and creating another band of black thread. Once you've got a band a similar size to the one next to it, again, we're going to change the angle. Let's pull off a little bit more thread. I'm just going to change the angle again. Try and keep it fairly similar to the one above. Again, this is your design, it's your choice. This is the way I do it. And oh, that's a bit too steep. There we go. That's better. And then change the angle again, making it straight. So we get another solid bar. And one last time, pulling it at an angle, rotating the float, and again, changing the angle and making another solid bar. And then one last time, a short one. Now, we're going to start to whip up onto the Sarkanda Reed body now. So again, this area of the float where we've sanded it down, this sort of pulpy area underneath is really quite soft. So don't put too much tension on that thread because it will cut into that sort of pulpy area. Don't know another word to describe it really, but it is like a pulp, like a fibrous pulp. So just relax the tension on the thread slightly. Keep rotating the float and you can start to build up a nice body of thread there, keeping it all nice and as neat as you can. There's no rush, you take your time and keep whipping all the way up. So don't put too much pressure on that thread. Just letting the rotation of the float as you twist it in one hand, letting it pull the thread onto the float. Once you get onto the body of the Sarkanda Reed where you haven't sanded it, you do have a little bit more strength. It is the wall of the float, or the wall of the reed, is a little bit thicker and stronger. So we keep rotating, but don't put too much pressure on because you will cut into the reed itself. So we're almost there. So now I've whipped up onto the reed itself, just making sure it's nice and neat. What I want to do now is tie it off. So clamp it under your finger. We're going to get our trusty fishing line loop, which is just here. Remember that goes underneath the thread. Clamp it under your thumb, wedge it under your finger. Don't let go of the tension on that finger, remember, otherwise all of that work will literally come undone. And then we are going to put the tension back on the thread. You can release your index finger and again, just rotating the float a few more times. So we'll have 1, 2, 3, and we'll go for 4 whips there. Okay, so now that's on, clamp it under your index finger again. You can let go of the thread. Find your scissors, snip off. So we're left with a tag end, and this tag end is going to go through the loop. Place it through the loop, and then pull the loop through underneath where you whipped over the top, and that pulls that thread through, and there should be nice and secure now. Let's put your loop away so I don't lose it. And we've got this tag end of thread. So before you snip that off, just make sure that everything's nice and neat. And then we can snip that off with our sharp knife. So just placing the blade underneath and just letting the blade pull across the thread. It does the work for you. So just neaten that all up. And there we have our whipped stem. So you can see the different bands of colours, and that helps differentiate between the bands and makes it look nice and neat. We can do exactly the same process on our antenna float. No, sorry, our insert waggler. We can do exactly the same process. So clamp the thread under your thumbnail, whip it round, and you've just got a shorter distance to travel and not so many bands of colour or bands of black. So that's that. So that's all done. Once that's on, the next thing you want to do is give it a coat of the Rustin's varnish, because that will then seal all that and bond it down. And once that's done, we'll coat the whole float in the Rustin's quick drying varnish, and then we'll be ready for getting it in the pasta tube to shot the float. And we're almost finished. We're almost ready to get it out on the lake. The varnish on the float now has gone off. So that was the clear coat, the quick drying varnish. So that's gone off. So our next stage is to put it into our pasta jar and get the shotting weight. So we've got to work out where you want your shotting pattern or your shotting weight to cock the float to. Now, personally, I like my floats to be shotted up to the first black line. And then that gives me that whole antenna there coming out of the water, really give me a clear lift bite. So let's get some shot on it and see where we're at. So I think there's probably going to be, my estimation for that is probably going to be around the 4 BB mark. So let's start off with 3 BB and see how we go from there. So let's thread on a bit of line and let's attach it with another shot. So at the moment I've got 3 BB on there. See that? See that? Show that camera. I've got 3 BB on there, and let's see where it sits in the water. So that sits really quite high. That's far too high for what I want. So I think 1 more BB should pull that down quite nicely. Let's have a little look. So take that out of the water. And let's put on 1 more shot. These are all BB, so we're now on 4 BB. And let's see what that does. Well, that's a little bit better. I think we can add a tiny little shot, maybe a number 4, just to pull that right down. I don't know if you can see that on the camera there. You can see it's still got probably 5 or 6 centimeters out of the water. So I'm going to push these shot closer together because my pasta jar is not quite long enough. Push these shot a little bit closer together. And then I'm going to try. I'm going to go with a number 4. So let's find a number 4. Here we go. Typical. It's not open. Better. So we're now on 4 BB and a number 4. So let's get that into the water and see what it does. Wow, look at that. Perfect. You can see that the line, the black line there is right on the surface of the water. That's exactly where I want it. Now, if I was fishing this method, all of my shot would be right down at the bottom of the line, almost, well, they would be on the lake bed, and then I would have a slightly longer hook link there. And when the fish picks up the bait, it rises, the weights come off the bottom, and the float literally comes up out of the water. So that's how I would fish a lift method. Not very well described. Hopefully, if we fish with it, I'll be able to show you in a bit more detail on the bank. But I'm very happy with the way that's sitting. So we know that's 4 BB and the number 4. So we can take that out, get that dry, and get that written on the float itself. After testing the floats in the pasta jar and getting the shotting weight right, so we worked out that it was 4 BB and a number 4. So you can see I've written on there 4 BB and a number 4. And I've also put a little logo on the stem of the float as well. I then gave that a final coat of the Rustin's quick drying clear varnish. Once that had dried off, I then gave it a coat of the Rustin's yacht varnish. So I've gone with the satin. I do like the satin finish. I think the gloss finish is just a bit too leery for me. So I go for the satin finish. I would really love it if they did a matte finish, but they don't. So I have to settle for the satin. So that's the float complete. We've got the whipping done. We've shotted it and we varnished it, and then we put the yacht varnish on over the top. So that is now ready to take to the lakeside. Same with the antenna float. So you can see the design there. So that one came out at 4BB. So you can see that written there. That was 4BB. And you can see how I've whipped it at the top. So very, very similar to the top end of the antenna float there. But obviously it's a much shorter stem. Now I've shot that again to the first black line. So it sits in the water there. And again, you've got that little bit of lift bite registration if you need it. So yeah, so there's our two floats completed. So two different types of Sarkanda Reed float. And if we bring back in our old faithful Waggler, there's three different styles of float there, all from the same Sarkanda Reed, which is great. There's two other types of floats that we could look at, but we'll talk about them in another film. Let's see if we can catch a fish with either of these two. I'm going to really try and use the lift method. Hopefully we can achieve a fish with that, but we'll definitely get something on the Insert Waggler, I'm sure. So let's head down to a lake and see if we can catch a fish. So welcome to the lakeside. Here we are at another one of my club waters. It's a rather overcast, little bit drizzly morning. Hopefully the rain will hold off. But we're going to check out and test out our antenna style float. And I'm hoping to fish the lift method. I haven't fished this method very much. So if I'm doing it wrong, I'm sure you'll all let me know in the comment section. So just to begin with, at the top end where the float is, I have got a float rubber and one BB split shot just to hold the float in place. I've plumbed the depth already. So we know the float is 4BB and a number 4. We check that out in our pasta jar. Then I've got nothing then all the way down the line until we get to the bottom where I've got the bulk of my shot. So I've got 3 more BB and my number 4. And then I've got about 6 inches then down to a size 12 hook. And I've got 4 nice juicy maggots on there. So that's it. So the theory is all of the weight is at the bottom with the maggots sitting just away from it. When the fish comes along and hopefully picks up the maggots, they pick them up and swim away. And as they swim away, they lift the weight off the bottom of the lake bed, and that makes the float rise up. It could just pull away quickly, depending on how the fish picks up the bait, but I'm hoping to capture that lift bite as it happens. So that's the setup. Let's talk a little bit about the rod and reel. So I've gone back to my Edgar Seeley Octafloat Deluxe. So here it is here. This is the rod that I restored. Again, another eBay special. I've paired that up with a J.W. Young's Trudex. Again, another eBay special. It's a bit of an old one. This is the one from 1963. So yeah, that's the setup. I've got 6-pound line going straight through to the hook. Because I'm only fishing 6-pound line, I didn't feel the need for a hook link. But there are some rather large fish in here. So if it does, if I am lucky enough to hook something a bit heavier, then that 6-pound line should be able to cope reasonably well. So that's the setup, really simple. Wish me luck fishing the lift method, because as like I say, it's not something that I do very often. So let's get it in the water and see what happens. So here we go, here comes the first cast. So let's take up a bit of line, and you watch me put it straight in the tree. Okay, so I'm not fishing very far out. I'm literally, what, half a rod length out from the tip of my rod. And you just watch that float settle. Boom, there it is. Now I know that's nicely plumbed and it's nicely on the bottom there, with a little pinch of maggots over the top. I've got some old maggots, and most of them are casters, to be fair, but there's a few still in maggot form. Blow away some of the powder in there, and I'm just going to chuck them over the top. And now we sit back, take a deep breath, and wait for Mr. Fish to come along. There's loads of fish in here. There's carp, there's mirrors and commons, there's roach, there's rudd, there's eyed, there's perch, there's even a few tench, although they are quite rare, but that would be perfect. I think it might be a bit too early in the season for tench. It is, where are we? We're in the middle of February. It's a Saturday morning, and it's yeah, it's a really lovely morning actually. Very little wind, hardly a ripple on the surface. Yeah, just going to settle in now and wait for that float to either go up or down. Oh, there we are. There's a little bit of movement there. That was quite quick. Is it going to come to anything? I know there's quite a lot of leaf litter under there, and there's quite a few snags, which is why I'm not fishing too close to the tree, because it's really quite snaggy. We don't want to lose our float on our first cast, do we? So let's just keep an eye on that. Maybe just throw a couple more maggots over the top. Let's see what happens. So my theory, and this is only a theory, when you're fishing maggots under a tree, especially in the, you know, in the winter months when all the leaves have fallen off the tree, got a bed of leaf litter at the bottom. With the maggots on the hook wriggling around, they can sometimes, again, theoretically, oh, there we go, a bit of movement. There's a lovely lift. Oh, beautiful. And we got a fish on. Did you see that lift? Fantastic. Wow, I don't think it's a brute, but it's a start. Let's hope it stays on and we can land it. Well, that was a perfect lift bite. I hope you saw that float coming out of the water there. Absolutely perfect. Exactly what it's designed for. Oh, it's woken up a bit. What is it? My guess it's a carp. Still fighting. It's tugging away. What have we got? Lovely bend in the old split cane. Beautiful. Got my thumb on the centre pin reel there just to play the fish. You don't want it running off and crossing the other side of the lake, but I'll let him take line if he needs to. At the moment, it seems to be okay just with me holding it on my thumb. Let's take up a bit of slack and see what happens. So I don't want to put too much pressure on because I am only on 6 pound line, and I don't want to put too much pressure on the cane rod, but this is coping quite well at the moment. Being very lazy staying in my chair. I should stand up really. Oh, there we are, look like a lovely little mirror. Probably of about 3 to 3.5 pounds, I would say. So not the biggest fish, but a welcome start. Lovely bend in the rod. Well, he doesn't want to give up. All you matchmen out there will probably have this landed by now, but I'm just taking my time and enjoying the tussle. Come on. Right, time to stand up, I think. Let's keep him away from the swim if we can. Let's get that net ready. Come on, Mr. Carp. In you come. Here we go. And we're in. Wow, first fish on the bank. Fabulous. Wow, what a pretty little fish. Lovely. And where are you hooked? Right in the mouth there. That'll count. Let's find the line. Lovely. Right. Now let's see if we can hold you up to the camera. Absolutely beautiful start to a cold February morning. Wonderful. So that lift method really worked well. Let's get this fish back. Maybe even catch another one. Thank you very much. And away. Fabulous. Let's get another one. Wow. I'm absolutely chuffed to bits with that. I'm really hoping, I haven't looked at the footage yet, but I'm really hoping you saw that lift bite on this float. So let's get back in the water and see if we can get another one. It's being a bit greedy, I know, but that's what we're here for. So let out a little bit of line. Literally just going to try and get it back in the same place. And let's see what's there. So it takes a while for the float to settle down on that line. Spot on, perfect. So just take up any slack. And we'll get a couple of maggots over the top. I say maggots, they're mostly casters. Never throw in the old bait at the end of it. Always keep hold of any old maggots that I've got. I keep them in my fridge in the pleasuring shed. I've got a little fridge in there. So if I'm fishing in a few days' time or fishing the following week, they'll quite easily last, a good 2 weeks in the fridge. Eventually they'll start to turn to casters, and I'll either use them as just chucking in bait, just a bit of feed, or if I'm not fishing for a while, I don't really want them to turn to flies, so I will freeze them, pop them in the freezer, And then that's it then. So if I go fishing in 2 or 3 months' time, I've got a nice little bit of, loose feed. I can mix it in with a ground bait if I want to. Oh, and we're in. So that wasn't a lift bite. So you can see the float works in 2 different ways. You can get the lift bite detection, or if that carp swims off quite quickly, it just pulls it straight under like any other normal float. But a bite is a bite nonetheless. So, this one feels about the same, maybe a little bigger than the last one, but it's hard to tell at this early stage. I hope it's not the same fish. Oh, love it. Wonderful sport. Ooh. It doesn't want to come up. Oh, there it comes. Let's see if we can get the net ready. Come on. Oh, it looks like a little common. What it is, commons always seem to fight a little bit harder than the mirrors. Oh, what a lovely fish. Beautiful colours. Are you ready for the net? Not quite. Another little fight in you yet. Here she comes. Come on. Come on. Oh, it doesn't want to give up easily, this one. There we go. And we're in. Whew, that was a scrap. Wonderful. Let's pop you on the mat. Let the line out. Wow, what a chunk. Let's find out where you're hooked. Not the world's prettiest mouth. You're an old warrior. There we are. Wow. Let's show you to the camera. You're going to behave yourself. You're not, are you? Didn't think so. You can see the lake. You want to get back to it. Come on. Let's shoot. And away. Fantastic. Not the best release in the world, but another fish nonetheless. So brilliant. What a good bit of sport. 2 fish, both on the lift method. Hopefully on the first fish, you saw the float come right up out of the water. And on the second fish, it was just a straight, clean take. So that shows you that the antenna waggler can work in 2 different ways. So that's brilliant. So while the fish are biting, I think what I'll do now is swap over to the Insert Waggler, which was the second float that we made in the shed. So I'm just going to re-rig and we'll get back out on the water. So I've just re-rigged very quickly. Let me just show you what I've done. So come here. So we've got the Insert Waggler, which is the second float that we made in the shed. So you can hopefully see that there. That was weighted at 4 BB. So I left my float rubber on the end of the line there. So I know the depth. So I haven't had to change the depth. So that's good because I'm using quite a small hook and the hook actually fits through the eye of the float. So all I had to do was strip the shot off, pass the line, pass the hook through the eye of the float to take the antenna float off, and then put the Insert Waggler on, and then, reapply the shot. So this time with the shot, I've gone for, I guess it's kind of a shirt button style. So I've got 1 BB directly under the float. So it's a 4 BB float. So I've got 1 BB directly under the float, and then about 1 foot to the second one, about a foot to the third one, and then about a foot to the fourth BB. And then there's about, I don't know, 10 inches, something like that, to the hook. Again, it's a size 12 hook, and I've got 4 maggots on there, 2 red, 2 white, and they're wiggling around quite nicely. So let's get it in the water and see if we can catch another one of those lovely fish. Here we go. So just take off a little bit of line and give it a little flick. There we are. Takes a moment for the float to settle, for those shot to sink through the water. And that's sat beautifully. So I'm just going to put a little pinch of maggots over the top. There we are. Now let's see if this float can produce the same quality of fish that the last one did. Fingers crossed. I think a swig of tea is in order. Don't know about you, but whenever you reach for your coffee cup or your tea cup, your flask, down goes the float. I love those moments when the float just starts to wiggle, starts to bob. Your hand goes and rests on the rod, and you just wait with anticipation to see if it's going to develop into something dramatic. This is why I love fishing so much, because you just don't know when. That's why I particularly like fishing with a float. Just watching that little bit of colour sticking out of the water, watching it sink away, not knowing what's grabbed it at the other end. Just brilliant. So I think I started saying earlier, and I might have been interrupted by a fish, about how the maggots sit on the bottom, on that leaf litter, because we're directly under the tree. You get a lot of leaf litter that's fallen, has sunken, it's settled on the bottom. And it's quite loose and quite fluffy at the bottom. And the maggots sitting on that leaf litter, and you know, as time goes on, they're wriggling around and they're just kind of dropping below the surface of the leaf litter, so making it difficult for the fish to find them. Some fish will, you know, get their noses in, and carp will get their noses in and rummage around, but they're not obvious and they're not visible. So if I know there's fish in the area, which I'm fairly certain there are, what I'll do after if I left the float still for quite a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, if nothing's happening, I'll just lift that float slightly and just bring those maggots back up onto the top of the leaf litter again. And we're in. Lovely. Let's hope it stays on. This feels like another good fish. Well, I've been lucky today. Oh, what a beautiful looking common. I think we're about ready. Oh, you've still got a fight to fight, haven't you? Where are you? Come on. Come on. Come on. Wow. And we're in. Wow. Can't believe it. What another absolute monster. Fantastic. Let's get it on the mat and take a look. It practically fills my net. Oh, steady now. Wow, what a long fish. Finished? Wow, that's a long fish. Wrap yourself round the line. Where's the hook? Just inside. I need to get my disgorger for that one. Always carry a disgorger with you. It's so much easier than trying to shove your fingers down the throat of the fish. It hasn't gone in very far, but it's just a bit too far to get my fingers on it. There we go. Nice and easy. Sort that out in a minute. Wow. What a brute. Look at that. Let's get the line off you. Now that is a 10-pound fish, without a doubt. Double figure fish. Let's get you back and away. Fantastic. Brilliant. So that is the Insert Waggler. As you can see there, yeah, he's working perfectly. So we are getting some lift indication on the float, which is brilliant. But on that one, it took it straight down. So that was great as well. So yeah, what do you reckon? One more cast? Go on then. So let's just cast it out again. Still on 4 maggots. That line settled nicely on top of the rod rest. So I'm going to try a few pellets this time. Got a mixture of pellets here, all sort of 4mm, 6mm. I've got some Robin Reds, I've got some krill, I've got some betaine green, and I've got majority of them are Skrettings sinking pellets. So I'll just try a few over the top and see what happens. Little dip on the float there straight away, but that's a bit too quick to tell whether it's the pellets doing that. And we're in. That's a bit better. Coming up. Nope. Let's keep it away from the staging. I might be completely wrong and it's a 1.5 pounder, but I've got a feeling it's reasonable. Oh, yeah, that's 5 or 6 pounds, I would say. Oh, beautiful looking fish. Not quite sure it's ready yet. Come on, back you come. Wearing the fish out, that's what I'm trying to do. So I can't put too much pressure on with the split cane rod. And again, remember I'm only on 6 pound line, so I don't want to overdo it. At least the fish hasn't pulled me halfway across the lake, which is good. keeping steady pressure on it, releasing the pressure on my thumb on the reel if I feel the rod pulling over too much. Oh, this is turning out to be quite a scrap. There she is. Oh, what a beautiful fish. Let's see if he'll come to the net now. Come on. You're not ready yet, are you? Oh, typical. You've come right up next to the net. And we're in. Wow. Another beautiful fish. Let's get you on the mat. Let's take a look at you more carefully. Wow, that's a lump. That is a lump. Ooh. Thanks for that. Thank you. Getting me soaking wet. Right, hooked right on the corner of the mouth. Where is it? Where is it? There it is. Lovely. Gotta love barbless hooks. Wow, what a beauty. Would you class that as a linear? I'm not sure. No, linear's down there, isn't it? Saddleback, is it? I don't know. Just got a line of scales right across the top. What a beautiful looking fish. Let's just hold you up. You're not going to behave yourself here. Let's see if we can get you to look at the camera. Come on now. Come on now. There we go. Wow. Look at that. That's a fish of maybe 7, 8 pounds. Go 8 pounds, may even go 9. What an absolute beautifully looking fish. Very, very happy with that. And yeah, there we go. We're going to head back to the shed now. And yeah, we'll take a look at what we're going to do in our next project. But what a beautiful fish to close out on. So thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you back in the shed. Take care. So welcome back to the shed. What a great session down at the lake. Fantastic. Both floats performed admirably, it has to be said. The lift method, great technique. It really worked well as it rose out of the water, so that gave us a good indication of the float. And then we had the Insert Waggler performing well as well, catching us a few fish, so that's really good. So both floats, perfect. Yeah, join me again on the next episode where we take a look at some different types of floats, but again, still using the Sarkanda Reed. So join me for that. Thank you again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you all soon.